Hello, Android developers. My name is Mohsen, and after a short delay caused by my health issue, I'm back with a new episode of Android Developer Tips. In this video, I have a special guest with me, and together we will be creating a custom widget using Jetpack Compose Canvas. So, without further ado, let's start. Saurabh, thanks for joining me. Hello.
Hey, hi. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Cool. Tell us some information about yourself. When did you start Android?
Yeah, so I started Android in 2012, actually in my final year in my university. As a part of my final year project, uh, I was using an Arduino board, so to
Mhm,
program drones, like some autonomous drone detection, like drones, multiple drones flying and like being able to detect each other. So we had an Arduino. We had a processor on the Arduino which we were programming with using C. And then we had a companion mobile app on which you can see the feed coming in from the camera and like
mhm,
try to control the drones a bit. Like the Arduino was mounted on top of these drones, so you could get their live feed and try to maneuver the drones using your the Android app. So it was a part of my final year project, basic, like only a 6 month thing. And then I graduated, got a job in a consulting firm, and they're actually started off with Windows Phone. So
mhm,
2013, they needed somebody who could build a Windows Phone app, or actually a Windows PC app, and then also Windows Phone companion app, and then a Surface app as well. Like Microsoft Surface was just starting off for Microsoft. Yeah, so that's where I started mobile, and then slowly, Windows Phone didn't work out, so I pivoted more into Android, and yeah, been doing Android for now close to what, 10 years? Yeah.
mhm. And where are you working right now?
Right now, I'm working at X, formerly Twitter, based out of
Mhm,
Singapore.
mhm,
And I've
mhm,
been in
mhm.
Singapore ever since I started my working career. I actually studied here, so been in Singapore for about 14 years and running.
Cool, cool. Yeah, I know the time difference was a bit challenging for us, but thanks for joining me. Okay, whenever you're ready, a stage is yours. You can share your screen and we can start watching.
So today we'll be building this speedometer, which I'd written about in October last year. And we'll try to record this live. I just have this blog post open here for just to show what we are trying to do, rather, but we'll try not to use it as a reference. And we'll see what are the things we need to keep in mind when we're building something like this. Right. So this is what we're trying to build: a speedometer arc, which has a progress indicator or a speed indicator and a bunch of markers. And yeah, the speed text as well as what speed you are in. Right. So actually the thing behind this is it's a very, not a funny, but a very random story. I was in a long taxi ride, coming back from the airport, coming back home. And I just looking at the speedometer in the taxi, just seeing how fast the taxi was going. I was sitting at the back seat, and it just popped in my head that, how would one build something like this? And I thought,
Mhm,
yeah,
mhm.
why not give it a try building it in Compose? It's just the most absolute random thing, just sitting at the back of a taxi, seeing this, and hey, let's try, go home and let's try to build it. So, well, few weeks later went by, and at one weekend I thought, no, why not? Let's try building it. So let's try to replicate that where we try to build this and see how far we can go. All right. So
Mhm.
I'll push this into presentation mode, so it's more legible. All right. So first up we have, okay, let's see, let's have a composable function, which is just our speedometers. Speed, speedometer screen. Okay. So this will be our speedometer screen, and we can have our preview up front, so we are able to see the preview. We will have show background, yeah, and show system UI. So missed column. Oh, we just got the speedometer screen. All right. So yeah, there's something in the preview, which is just an empty. All right. So let's look at back our speedometer that we have. So we have an arc here. So you want to first up, like if you try to break this down into smaller components, you have an outer arc, you have a bunch of markers, and you have them in different colors. So this is just a replica of what a speedometer looks like. Like these are your 0, 20, 40, like your major speed indicators. Then you have these minor ones, which like I like to call them minor just to a way to differentiate in my code. So I would like to call these as major markers because they have
Mhm.
text associated with them. And then you have minor markers, which is like your 10s, 30s, 50s, and then you just have more indicators. I don't know what to call them, but just further more indicators which represent each unit, right? So if you're trying to fit 0 to 20, so you have 10, 20, 30, 40, so on and so forth. And you have this speed indicator right at the center, which depicts your current speed. So first up, let's try to draw this arc. So the arc is oh wait, where is that? Okay. All right, so we'll begin with the canvas. So let's have an empty canvas, and we could pass in a modifier. All these stuff like how you want it to look on the screen, what's your modifier and all, etc. It's something we look into later. Like the best practices, like such as you should pass a modifier here, yada yada.
Mhm.
We'll not really worry about that for the purpose of this video and this demo, right? So first up, let's draw an arc. A handy plugin in Android Studio called fill function. Like
Mhm.
in case people are wondering, you could just download this plugin, install it in your Android Studio, and then this helps to autocomplete whatever parameters this function is accepting. So I just do fill function just like to get us started. And right, okay. So let's say let's use color.red. Right, we have a red color. Start end angle. We'll get into, we don't need to worry about top left. Size is just going to enclose the size what we have. Alpha, get rid of it. Blend mode, no need. Style. Okay, not for the time being. Let's see, we can work with the default style. So let's look at back to this. So if you see this, one thing to know about the Canvas Draw Arc API is that it starts drawing from 3 o'clock in a clockwise direction. So if you look at the definition of draw arc, it says it draws an arc to fit the given rectangle. It starts from start angle degrees around the oval up to start angle plus sweep angle, right? And
Mhm.
another important point is that if you see here, this is what used to stump me earlier. Like the first time I was doing this, I clearly remember I could not figure out how to get the arc perfectly
Mhm.
because the starting angle is from represents 3 o'clock. So it's like this. So when I'm sweeping,
Mhm.
sweep it like this, right? So, but I want to
Mhm.
start it a bit more at the bottom because if you see here, it doesn't really start at 3. It starts
Mhm.
below 3, which is like somewhere around 30 degrees, right? So this is what we'll do. We'll try to say, okay, you start off from 30, right? And you draw me something which is all the way till 270, right? So
Mhm.
you have
Mhm.
270 here. So this is what the angle that you're looking at. This is the entire sweep that you're looking at, but not 270. Sorry, not, is it 70? It's actually, I think it's actually less. So this would be about my 30. This would be about 180. It's actually 240, 270 would be somewhere here. Which is not what we want. We want about something around
Mhm. Mhm.
40. So let's change it to 240. And we are sweeping it in anti-clockwise, not clockwise, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
We are doing anti-clockwise. So we give it a negative. Then
Uh-huh.
let's give it a style so that let's give it a stroke. Width of, let's give it, I don't know, 2 dp. Good enough. Right. And then we don't have anything, yes. Okay, we don't have anything yet, probably because we don't have the size that is needed on the screen, right? So how much
Mm-hmm.
size would this take? So let's say 360 dp. Yeah, and now you start to
Mm-hmm.
see disappear, right? Let's just give it some padding so it looks so it's more legible in the video. Let's say we get a just 20 dp. Right, okay. It pushes us a bit into the center of the screen. Right? I think it should be
Mm-hmm.
visible now. So
Yeah,
now
yeah, that's
you have your arc here. So one tip I would have here, which I generally use myself for debugging purposes, is where's the center? So we know in Android, like your top left is actually 0, comma 0, but where's the center of the circle? The center of the circle would be somewhere here, right? So just let's draw a line just for debugging purposes, or so that you know later what you're looking at. Let's just say we have, not for looking purposes, but more like you have a context on how your subsequent part of the code flows, because it flows with respect to what the center looks like. So let's say we do this, and then we say you start at offset 0f and 0f, and you end at center, right? And see. So now you know
Mm-hmm.
this is your center. So this is the center we are working with. We will remove this later once your speedometer are done. But this is a good way to gauge, okay, this is my center.
Mm-hmm.
I see this is my center. This was my 3 o'clock. And now I've drawn an angle from 30 to minus 240, right? Giving me the entire arc that I'm after, right? So it's a
So
270-degree
this
arc.
center is coordinate of the canvas center,
Correct.
and since we didn't set any center to draw arc, it fits or sits in the center.
Correct, correct. So it uses,
Okay,
so this
okay.
essentially now becomes the center of your circle,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or of
Great.
this arc, which is a part of a circle, right? So here, if you actually say, okay, let's draw 0 to 360, you would see it's the
Mm-hmm.
entire circle. And this is the center of your
Okay,
circle.
okay.
Right?
I was expecting something more hard, hardcore to find the center, but anyway, that's great.
Okay. It has a use center field, but that's slightly different. Use center is another way you could use to figure out what is the center,
Mm-hmm.
which is, oh, we've set it to
It's
false, right?
already set. Yes.
If you set it to true, you will see it closes itself at the center.
Uh-huh.
So that's another way to verify what is the center of this arc that we're talking about. Looks more like the Pac-Man, but like this is essentially becomes the center, right? But for the purpose of this, I was keeping this as false because we don't want it to be closed. And with the non-closed one, you can see how the speedometer is evolving as we go along.
Mhm, mhm.
Okay,
Great.
right. So next, let's try to draw the markers that we have, the individual markers, right? So for the individual marker, what we need is the marker appears every point here, right? At every point here. So now with this being your center of the circle, right? So if you remember high school math, you'll see if this is your center of the circle, right? So your circle is still here. Like, let me complete the circle again to get some idea to try to explain this one, because this one was tricky for me as well.
Mhm,
You have your circle here. Now, if you draw a line from here to here, right? So this is, and then you draw a line here, you get this angle here,
mhm,
right? If it doesn't really make sense, I have a graphic ready. Let me pull that graphic out. So if you see this graphic here, you can see this is what I'm trying to talk about. That you have your center here. This is 0 degrees. This is 330. Like this is the angle. So if like let's go from here. This is 0. This angle here is 90, right?
mhm, mhm, mhm,
This angle from this point to this point, this angle is 60, right?
mhm,
This point to this point, your angle is 30. So essentially, if you look at this speedometer, we essentially are from 300 to 60, right? So my markers have to be drawn at an angle of 300. all the way up to 180, 150, 120, 90, down to 60. So that's how I'm looking to draw my markers, starting from 300 all the way down to 60. And then if you look at the core speedometer, we are actually drawing 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. So we're drawing it in increments of 2. That's just what I chose. You could choose to draw it in increments of 5, whatever. Like, so for this purposes, let's continue with the fact that we are going to draw it in increments of 2. So let's set up a loop then for angle in 300 to down to 60, step 2. All right. So now we have the angle. So now this is 300 as we looked, and this is 60, right? But the speed at 300 is actually 0, right? That's where the speed is. So your speed is actually angle minus angle minus 300. So this is my speed that I need to, the speed that I need to draw. Now I want to draw a line here. It's a line which will be like this, right? So to draw a line, as we saw here, we need a start point and an end point, right? So what would be the start point here on this circle here? It's we go back to trigonometry from high school, that if you know, if you've given a circle, right, and you know the radius of the circle, and you know the angle at which you're supposed to draw that that if you need an angle, if you need the point on the circle and you know the angle, you can use trigonometry to get that point on the arc where that angle meets, right? So that function is, I have it written down, so we won't write it. I prepared with this, it's somewhere in my here. So I have this. So this is the function that we will use, which is point on the circle, which is essentially given the theta in degrees, like the angle here. Given that angle and the radius of the circle and the starting point, the center offsets coordinates, because the center is not 0, comma 0, right? The center is something else. Given these center points, your x point is actually cx plus radius of sine theta, and y is cy plus radius into cos theta. So we will use this helper function to actually get the point on the arc where we are supposed to draw the marker. So that will give me the start point on the circle, right? So this is my, so then I have my start point, start offset would be point on the circle, right? It's point on the circle, which would be, this is my angle to double, okay. Then my radius is, so my radius is size dot height divided by 2, right? And this is my center dot x, and this is my center y, right? So this is my start point, right? This is this point where I want to draw. And what would be my end point? My end point would essentially be just a bit off from here, something inside. Like if you look back at the diagram here, you can see, are you able to see the blog post again?
Yes.
Right? If you see, my start point is this and my end point is the length of this, right? So let's say let's define the length of these markers. Like the longer marker or the major marker is slightly taller than the minor markers, right? So let's give them some arbitrary length that we want to have. So let's say my major indicator length would be like an 18 dp, right? So then my endpoint, where is it? My end offset would be the same point on circle. Theta in degrees is essentially the same. Angle dot 2 double, right? Radius is size dot height divided by 2 minus, because now we want a smaller radius, right? Which would be my major indicator dot length dot 2px,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
So this is my this thing, and we are left with, what else we are left with? Cx is the same, which is center dot x, and cy is center dot y, right? So now we have our start point and end point. We could use this to draw a line, let's say, where I'm using color is equal to color on black, start offset, start is equal to start offset, and is equal to end offset. And now we have these lines being drawn, right?
mhm,
Correct. We've not gone and like made them better yet. Now we've drawn all of them, right? At the same,
mhm,
like,
mhm,
because this function is drawing all of them the same way. We'll
mhm,
tweak it a bit to check if it's a major or a minor, but this gives you an idea. One optimization we can make is, if you look at the speedometer, generally your start point is not really overlapping with the arc, which in our case is overlapping right now. If we zoom in, you could see
mhm, mhm,
this is not what we want. We want a slight gap between them, right? So we can change our start offset where we say, oh, our start offset actually has an initial offset, right? So let's add an initial offset. We say, okay, you have an initial offset of 5 dp, and we subtract that from my start point, just like we
mhm,
did there. And now everything shifts a bit in, right? Right. And now we can start doing the major and minor stuff, right? We can say, oh, if my speed is actually major, which means it's a modulo of 20, right? I then only draw this.
mhm, mhm,
And now I have my major markers, 0, 20, 40, 60. We could add some styling to my to this. We could give it a some kind of a, we can give it a stroke width of, let's say, 4 dp. So it's a bit bolder. Oh, wow, looks quite bold. Go with 2. Okay. We could give it a 2 dp of making it a bit bold. Then we can go ahead and say else if my speed marker modulo 10, right, is equal to 0, then we want something, it's a similar stuff, but we'll
mhm,
tweak it slightly. I mean, of course, we can later extract all of this out into helper functions, but not for the purpose of this. And then if that's the case, then let me have a minor indicator marker, right? Which
mhm,
is
mhm,
which is not 18, which is like 14, let's say. You can subtract it from this, and let's give it a different color like blue, right? And now we have your minor indicators in the middle coming up, right? Which are slightly even smaller.
mhm,
And otherwise, else if my, oh, you don't need a check because you're already stepping by 2, right? So
mhm,
you're stepping by 2, stepping down here by 2. Else if I have this, then same length, same thing, same blue, just that there's no stroke width. All right.
To summarize up to this point, so we have a canvas. We use arc to draw a circle which is not complete. And using the angle of that circle, we draw lines with some helper function to calculate the start and end of the line. And then based on the angle, and if it's divided by 20 or 10 or other angles, we just draw different lines. That looks really cool. Go on.
All right. Great. So now let's try to get the text on board. Like, where do we place? Like, we want the text to
Mm,
signify these major markers, the 0, 20, 40, 60, so on and so forth, right? So The idea would be the same, right? Because we're trying to draw text. We'll try to draw the text only at here, which is
Mm-hmm.
your major marker. We do not need it inside the minor markers, right? So you want to place text here, which is again to draw text inside a canvas. You need the text layout result as it's mentioned here, right? And wait, yeah, so where were we? If we do the fill function. Okay, so we need text layout result. Alpha is optional, this is optional, this is optional, this is optional. We'll get to the optional values later. We can do a text color here. We have a color option as well. So we'll just give the text color. Let's just call it, let's just give black. I think it was black or whatever. That we can tweak it later. Right. So we need the text layout result, which we can get via a text measure. So let us define our text measure here. So val text measure. Text measure. Okay. So we have this, and using the text measure, I can get the text layout result. Text layout result, text measure, not measure. So I want to show the speed. So I'll say speed, which I already have. And I want to have a style. So let's just give it text style dot default. Default should work for us, right? And yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
speed
just
dot.
to a string. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right. So now I have my text layout results. So I say, okay, let's I give my text layout result here.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Mm-hmm.
drawn it. So now we have the text drawn, but all of them are just drawn on top of each other, right? So
Mm-hmm.
now the trick here is by using translate, right? What you could do is you could move your canvas to a different coordinate space, right? And then subsequent instructions will use that new coordinate space to draw. So this is what we
Mm-hmm.
want to do for text. We want to move to a different coordinate space, which is essentially at these points, and start drawing at these points.
I,
So
I, I was wondering we can say to text to draw in a specific place, but that's interesting.
you can ask text to draw in a separate place. Maybe I actually did not try that. Offsets the
Yeah.
text from the top left point of the current coordinate system. We can try. I did not try top left last time, but if you look at the top left is set to 0, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
essentially this 0. So now what we want the top left to become essentially somewhere here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
if I don't translate and I say this is my top left, we get there,
Okay. Yeah.
right? But the speed is showing in negative. I think it should be 300 minus angle because angle is smaller. Okay. Right. Okay. So we could
Okay.
do without translating, right? Because the top offset does this for me. But here we see that we have a slight issue. And now we'll try to debug this in real time because this is not what I used. So let's let's
Mm-hmm.
let's try.
Mm-hmm.
Let's try so we can get back to what I did. The issue that we are seeing is that it's a bit offset. It's a bit not at the right position. It's a bit shifted, sometimes down, sometimes a bit to the right. And I feel that's because uh, I'm
Yeah, we are
saying my
setting top left of the text, and then yeah,
correct. So
that's
yeah,
the
the
point.
top left of this text. What we want the top left of the text to ideally be the center of the text,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
right? So what we could do is using the text layout result, I actually have the height and width of my
Mm-hmm.
text. So what I could do is that I could say, okay, my text height is actually text layout result dot size dot
Size.
height, and my text width is actually the width. So then instead of saying that I want to use end offset, I create a new text offset and I say my text offset is the point on the circle. Essentially, let's just copy this. It's essentially this, but my radius is now the radius till here, which is essentially this guy, minus my, because I wanted to be a bit further ahead to the center, right? So text width divided by 2, right? And I use this here. So I want, yeah, now we are getting there. It's a bit text width by 2, right?
And
And
then I think instead of center,
yeah, I think you'll have to move the center a bit
yeah,
also. Your center is essentially center dot, will center really work here? Because if I move this,
this gives us the text offset, but then we need to, uh, mm, you know, divide the width and height to 2. And
yeah,
yeah,
so we're moving this a bit
yeah,
up, and this will also need to
yeah, exactly. I
go
think
a
that
bit
should do
right.
it.
Yeah. And I
Hmm.
think
Hmm.
we're missing something. Oh, we are only doing major indicator dot length. Oh, we're missing the offset here. So we've only translated by this much. We've
Hmm.
not included this gap here, which was indicator initial offset. Oh, 2 pixels. Right. Okay.
Hmm.
Huh.
Hmm.
You actually don't need to translate. You can achieve that same functionality with the top left of moving. Right. And now I think this looks pretty good.
Yeah, that's very nice.
It looks all aligned. If you're not happy with the gaps here, you can reduce the indicator offset or the major indicator length depending on your own requirements, right? If you're like, oh, there
Hmm.
should be
Hmm.
less gap here, you can just tweak these values. But yeah, the text looks nicely well spread around. And now we are left with our final, the speed indicator, right?
Hmm.
So now we know this is 0, comma 0. This line we had earlier, we can get rid of it. So now we had our, this is our center, and the logic is essentially the same, right? You have this, and now you want to draw your speed, which let's say the current indicator is pointing at 60, right? So you can say we can essentially accept the current speed as a
Hmm.
input, current speed as a float, right? And we can use this, but we should specify that our current speed is actually limited, right? So let's use the float range, which is an annotation. We can say, oh, my float range, this value should be between 0 to 0 to 240, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay. This is my current speed, and let's just give my current speed here as 60. Right? Okay. So I have my current speed, and where is it? Where does this end? It ends here. So given my current speed, essentially the same thing, right? Start offset. Oh, you don't need the start offset. The start is 0. You just need
Hmm.
the end. You just do, let's just take this. Current speed offset is equal to current speed. Radius is, you don't need this. Radius is this guy, right? And then you just do a draw line. Color is equal to what color? Any. Start is center dot x and center dot no, just center. That's an offset. And end is equal to current speed offset. And it doesn't really point in the right way, but let's wait. Stroke width is equal to 4 dot dp. Okay. Wait, it's pointing the wrong way. What are we doing wrong here? Current speed offset, theta.
Uh, because our zero is not the real zero.
Yeah, 0 is not the real
As you
0. So
said,
you
it's
have,
3 o'clock, so you have to,
correct.
yes.
Right. And okay, we probably need to reduce the radius a bit because we need to point it, I don't know, point it at least till here. Right. So we can do is major indicator dot len dot to px. So it moves back a bit, right? I don't know, another 4. Now I'm just ad hoc putting in values again. We could abstract that
Yeah,
out into context to look at a
we
bit
do a
more better,
lot.
right? You have this, and I think another tweak. Yeah, I think this looks good enough. I think we could make slight changes if we want to. Like I remember I did a few stuff to make it look a bit better. You have a cap, which is a default cap. I wanted it to be rounded because if you see,
Mhm.
it's actually right. It's actually round. Right, yeah, because the speedometer,
Mhm.
right, it's
Mhm.
a bit round. And I think one more thing we could potentially try to do, I don't know if I did there. Yeah. Oh, I had an is that you want the speed to be shown, right?
Yeah,
Like
some
right.
transparency, some
Yeah, you can
alpha.
just yeah, you can just use an alpha channel here for the color. Oh, it has an alpha, right? So we can add an alpha here. We can just say, okay, 0.7, right? Yeah, now you can see 0.4. Ah, okay.
That's
Now you start.
beautiful. Okay, great. That looks very nice. Thanks.
Yeah. I think one thing extra I did in the demo was I add a slider here. So
Mhm.
and the slider would essentially just control the speed. That's it.
Mhm. Mhm.
Just
Mhm.
give an effect, right? If you're like driving, the speedometer actually moves. But I think that's quite straightforward at this point where you can take this speedometer value, you can pass it as a state, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
You
Mhm.
can
Mhm.
have a slider and you can take the value from the slider and keep on calling the speedometer screen to re-render itself, like to recompose, right?
Yeah.
And because only the current speed will change, it will only recompose this section.
Mhm. 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 Yeah, interesting. Yeah, there are some room for improvement, but we got the whole gist. That's what
Oh,
I liked
definitely.
about.
Like, this is not production code in any ways.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. But okay, I learned a lot up to this point. So I have never tried Canvas in Compose before, which is really nice to know that it has a center, it has some coordinate already ready to use, which is really nice. And yeah, drawing arcs, lines, and yeah, text in Canvas is also interesting. I had no idea about that text measure. Um, cool, cool. I already
Oh,
learned a lot. Thanks.
even I learned something live, right? Like the last time I did not use top left.
Hmm.
I remember absolutely that I use translate to move the canvas to that point and
Hmm.
then draw over there. And then like every time I would translate, draw there, and then do a restore so I can get back to my original state. Again in the next loop, do a translate again.
Hmm.
Right.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
this is quite nice.
Thanks, Sora, for joining me. It was really nice tutorial. Yeah, as you said, sometimes you see something and you think, can I do it or not? And you challenge yourself. And it was such an interesting challenge. I already learned a lot from it. Anything else you want to add at the end?
No, nothing else. Just thank you for having me. It was great fun trying to build this live after so many months.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for joining me. How can people find you on social network?
Um, I work at X or formerly Twitter, right? So that is definitely the best way to find me. My handle
Mhm.
is I Saurabh Arora. Just like my name, just suffix it with I. Yeah.
Yeah, I will put the link to the article in the video description. If you're interested, you can go and take a second look and see how all the details that Saurabh already wrote here. And thanks for joining us. If you're interested in such content, this is what I do in this channel. So subscribe and hit the bell button to get notified whenever there's a new video. And leave a comment. How did you find this tutorial? And if you'd like to see more. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Thank you. Bye.